This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z. I'm Matt Fanslow, and I am the only one here who knows secret ninja moves from the government. Today, I have the really distinct pleasure of finally getting on the podcast, the editor-in-chief of Ratchet+Wrench magazine, Chris Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here, Matt. A pleasure.
I am a big fan of your column.
Oh, thank you so much.
I do really like and agree, I guess, sympathize with the relationships between sports and businesses. Just not just automotive, but any business, but automotive maybe even particular.
Yeah, I agree. I see so many parallels, and I think one of my favorite quotes comes from Mark Cuban. He said, "Business is my favorite sport," and that's always stuck with me. He said it maybe 10 years ago on Shark Tank, and I was like, that's really profound. But yeah, treat business like sports because they're very similar.
So before we get rolling too fast here, let's get a word from our sponsor, Napa Autotech Training. So are you looking for the right training provider that offers cutting-edge courses to hone your automotive skills? Well, let Napa Autotech take you to the next level. Go to napaautotech.com for more details about classes near you. Yeah, Mark Cuban's kind of one of my, I don't want to blow it out of proportion. I don't want to say a hero, but he's somebody I value a lot of what he says, be it in an interview, which he does terrific interviews.
He does.
Terrific. As well as just his appearances on Shark Tank. I just think he's a straight shooter.
Oh, I agree. He's super practical. Like the stuff that he says, like when he doesn't want to deal, it's a very practical reason why. It's not this over the top, like, oh, I'm just not into the product. He doesn't have to be into the product. He just looks at the end game and says, yeah, it just doesn't fit my portfolio of things that I do, and it doesn't work.
I mean, again, I already call him a straight shooter. I like how honest he is about success. Like the reason he got his first just massive chunk of money selling, I think, to Yahoo Sports, that streaming service that him and some buddies,
the Clear Channel,
created. He's just like, I was at the right place at the right time with the right people, with the right technology breaking. Like all these things fell in together for us to get this big payday. And then like the big purchase he made was a lifetime, I think like, what do they call that? I think it was with American Airlines, where it's basically he gives them a lot of money and then he can fly for free anywhere in either the US or the world. That was what he did. And it was like, I don't know what it was, $100,000 or $200,000. It wasn't like this, for me, it's an unbelievable amount of money. For you, I'm sure it's just what you have in your checking account, But that's what he got. And I don't know. And then another interview, he was talking about being very wealthy now. And what's changed? And his answer was freaking awesome. Was he used to go to stores like a Walmart or something of that nature, not the high-end clothing stores, and find a pair of jeans that he liked and would fit, but he wouldn't be able to afford them. So he would hide them somewhere in the store until he could afford to go in and buy them. And now he doesn't look at prices. If he likes it, he can buy it. That's the biggest difference.
Yeah, that's a great story. Love him or hate him. I know a lot of people, he doesn't suit everybody, but I definitely resonate with Mark Cuban because I think he comes from Pittsburgh, a place near and dear to my heart, but he's got that hustle. Like he's always been someone who just hustled. He worked hard. He values hard work quite a bit. So you look at him as like not some guy who had a silver spoon, but he worked hard. He was selling software for a long time. Then he got into Clear Channel and moved from there, but And he remained practical. Like you talked about that story with American Airlines. I just want to fly. And he talked about one time on an interview where how he likes to buy in bulk on Amazon. He says, oh, if I see something on sale on Amazon, I'll buy an entire year's supply of it. Just real practical guy.
Yeah, if you can afford it, absolutely. Going to Costco or Sam's Club, like if you can swing it and you can buy in bulk, you end up saving money over the long term. He wanted a pair of shoes when he was a kid, and I forget what age it was, 10, 11, 12. And he wanted whatever pair of shoes, probably Jordans, probably Air Jordans. And his dad looked at him like, are you insane? This much money for a pair of shoes? Why don't you get a job and buy them yourself? And I think his dad at the time was playing cards with some friends. And he went and did whatever and then came back like, well, what kind of job could I do? And he's like, I don't know, figure it out. And so he's like, everybody needs garbage bags. So he scored some deal with some store owner that he could buy garbage bags for what ended up being a roll, I think was like $1. And he went around the neighborhood and said, if you ever need garbage bags, you give me a call and I'll run over a box of or a roll of garbage bags for $2. And after however long, months, he had enough money to go buy his shoes. That's how he got started, right?
It's always been a salesman, man. Always been a salesman.
Just imagine a little Mark Cuban going door to door. Like, if you ever need garbage bags, you just give me a call. I'll run over a roll of them for $2.
But he's never changed. Still the same guy.
Yeah. And probably more importantly and related to, I think, what we can talk about is when he took over the Dallas Mavericks, when he bought the Dallas Mavericks. I don't want to say they sucked because they did have some legacy of success leading up to that. They weren't so good when he bought them, but a few years prior, they were in the Western Conference Championship conversation and potentially the World Champion conversation where they were really good. They ran the Lakers at the time, and this is Showtime Lakers. Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Byron Scott, maybe Kurt Rambis to start, and then AC Green for sure. So this is at the height of the Lakers' domination of the 80s and arguably maybe the early 90s, but for sure the 80s. They would run them ragged. They were stacked. Pre-Detroit Pistons, Mark Aguirre. So he buys them, and the players talking about how the culture changed very rapidly, where players were now valued differently. The first thing he attacked was the team locker room and changed that into something where they did want to be in. They wanted to hang out before games, after games. They would congregate there. And then, of course, the weight room. They changed the weight room and they made it not just the stadium to play in, but also the training facility, the practice facility. It's where the players, when they didn't know what else to do at home, would hop in their cars and drive to the freaking stadium. And there'd be somebody else on the team there just working out, going over game film, talking to the coaches. It changed everything. And then a couple really smart draft picks. But which I wouldn't give him all the credit for anyways. That was probably a lot of, Donnie Nelson. Or no, you're right.
Don Sr.
Don Sr. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Don was the guy there for a while, man, because Don was there when I started when the Mavericks caught my radar in the mid-90s when he had like Jason Kidd, Jimmy Jackson, those guys.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
they were Jamal Mashburn. I mean, they had a team.
That was a heck of a
team. They had a great team. And unfortunately, the team didn't run into another basketball team. They ran into Tony Braxton, who broke up the entire team.
That's right. They were a heck of a team.
They were
fun to watch.
They were a great team in the mid-90s, yeah.
Just that culture and just hiring good people around him to help him build a team that eventually went on to win championship with one superstar. And don't get me wrong, like he was surrounded by some very good players, but not like superstar level. They didn't have the triple threat. They didn't have the big three, which got really popular with I think like LeBron, or you didn't have the big 1-2 punches from like the 80s where you had, I don't know, the Seattle Supersonics were a bad example. They kind of had a triple threat with Xavier McDaniels, Tom Chambers, and maybe Nate McMillan, but a lot of times it was like a big 1-2 punch. Houston Rockets had the Twin Towers.
They were more like what you saw with San Antonio in the early 2000s. Like you have Tim Duncan as the standout, and then you've got like the pieces around him. You had Dirk as a standout, and you had guys like Michael Finley and some of the pieces around him that all complimented him.
Yes, 100%. And they beat a stacked Miami Heat.
Oh, man.
That ain't nothing. They earned that championship. There's a lot of people that think there should be asterisks next to certain championships, like the Houston Rockets when they won when Michael Jordan was retired. playing baseball that, oh, okay, those championships should probably have asterisks. The freaking Mavericks should have an asterisk next to theirs for just how big a deal it was that they beat a stacked Miami Heat.
They should have did it twice, though. They were up 2-0 that first series, and then it just fell apart. But they could have done it twice.
So true. Yeah, man. So one of your articles, the latest one, was talking about the shining talent or the superstars oftentimes weren't high draft picks. They weren't predicted to be what they are or what they became. I don't think leading up to the draft, and I got to be careful how I word this, because I think maybe better yet, out of college or when he declared for the draft, I don't think anyone thought yet that Michael Jordan was going to end up being the monster he became. When he went and played USA basketball, Bobby Knight turned to somebody and said, "This is the best basketball player I've ever seen." And then I think it should have got around like, okay, this kid's going to be good. And he still got drafted third.
I think it was on Last Dance, that Bobby Knight story was so funny, where he was talking to the Trailblazers and they're like, "We need a center." Like, well, play Jordan at center.
Yeah, I know. Say what you will with Bobby Knight. I think that guy was a straight shooter too.
He absolutely was.
Little loose cannon, but that's right. I love that. Like, draft Michael Jordan, play him at center.
Yeah.
He's that good. And they ignored it. Olajuwon, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone really criticize the Rockets for drafting Olajuwon over Jordan. I just really haven't ever heard that. So that's how good that guy was. And then it sucks, I forgot his name. He's from Kentucky. He was a good player, but injuries. And you just wonder, like, nowadays with medical technology, if he could have came on, just been a decent, really good player. But yeah, the Trailblazers definitely wanted a center and drafted him and still didn't get a center. But I guess the moral of that story is, from management's perspective, is maybe adjust your range, your field of view as to talent, and talent can be developed or given the opportunity to succeed. Like, if you take someone and put them in a environment, they can succeed. They can become a superstar, if you will. And I'm kind of trying to think of like a good example of what that would be. What's a player that got drafted in any sport? Basketball seems to be the easiest for me. I'm sure I can think of something in football where they were drafted and kind of struggled, and then they got traded and exploded. It should be easy with the Timberwolves.
I think Jerome Bettis is one of those guys.
Yeah, right.
He got drafted by the Rams, played pretty good for the Rams, but not great. Goes to Pittsburgh and just becomes this lights out running back.
A favorite.
Yeah, it just becomes
for fantasy football.
Exactly. Goes on to become a Hall of Famer. But I think he's a great example of that.
That's a terrific example. I suppose, and from a employee perspective too, is looking for that environment. And maybe it isn't just about stats. Like I had mentioned earlier, Mark Aguirre. That guy was a hell of a scorer. Like, he was a hell of a player, hell of a scorer. Detroit Pistons. So this is late 80s, I think. Maybe early 90s. Early 90s. They couldn't get over the hump. They couldn't beat the Boston Celtics. Whether it's because of improving the team or Boston starting to age out. Larry's back was destroyed. Robert Parrish is slowing down a little bit. Kevin McHale injuries, foot injury, kind of slowed him down, at least from a defensive standpoint for sure. And I'm sure a little bit, at least offensively, although he still figured a way to score a lot. They trade a dominant low post player in Adrian Dantley, who himself almost deserves a conversation because a dominant low post player who is like 6'4" and unstoppable. Detroit Pistons trade him partly because of his unwillingness to buy into the team concept and allow Isaiah and Joe Dumars to be the primary offensive threats, and then Vinnie Johnson coming off the bench, the microwave. They trade to get Mark Aguirre, who is known as more of an offensive person. I don't mean that literally like offensive, but more offensive minded player. But he buys into the concept. And true, him and Isaiah Thomas were pretty darn good friends and probably had some coaching up to that. But he leaves Dallas Mavericks, who are kind of struggling, to go to the Detroit Pistons, where his stat lines drop. You're not the primary weapon anymore. But he sacrificed it for the good of the team so that he could get some rings. And he got 2 of them. And I think from an employee standpoint, that's something to think about, where maybe you are like the big dog wherever you're at, but the shop's not doing so great. Maybe it's not managed so well. Presumably that's why it's struggling. It's not managed so well. You're maybe the head honcho or the main person in the back, the one that everybody goes to, but you're hitting a ceiling with whatever your desires are to become a better tech or make more money or get better benefits or a better work environment. And this shop is not looking to do any of that for whatever reason. I don't even want to sound like I'm demonizing the owners, that they're maybe just doing everything they can to keep their head above water, but it pays to kind of look around, and then maybe you end up looking at shops where you're not going to be the big dog anymore. You're not going to start out being the one everybody goes to, that the shop kind of revolves around. You're going to be playing second, maybe third fiddle, but you're going to be part of something maybe special, right? And maybe eventually you do become the big dog. Maybe eventually you work your way up, or not even like there has to be this hard type hierarchy, but you're now kind of on the same level as these other techs. And I think that's something to really think about. I think we have a lot of people complaining about their station or where they're at, where the shop's going. And some of it's just complaining probably for the sake of complaining. I mean, let's be honest. But some of it is you're too scared to move, and I don't know why. I think that there's a lot to that you could look to these stories in sports where moves are made not for more money, at least not initially.
Yeah, you're right. You look at how many people left situations where they were disgruntled. A guy like Randy Moss leaves Oakland, disgruntled. Goes to New England, has a career year, and you're playing with Tom Brady. Or you get a guy like Corey Dillon, same thing, disgruntled with Cincinnati's mediocrity. Goes to New England, closes his mouth, plays great football. So you get those situations all the time where these guys have to put the ego aside and say, I can either be the big dog here in this organization and just continue to be toxic around here, or gets to the point where you become a little toxic around here, causing the problems or whatever the case may be because you're unhappy, you're not getting what you want, or I can swallow my pride, my ego, go somewhere else, go to a place where they've got great culture. Maybe, like you said, I'm not the top guy. I'm not the one tech where everyone wants to hang, who everyone comes to for advice and this and that, but I'm a part of something special. I'm a part of a great culture. And eventually, after being there for some time, I'm doing my best work. I'm having my best life. I've got things at home are phenomenal. Like everything is clicking for me because I'm willing to not be that guy just for a moment to go somewhere else where, okay, there's other people here, but I get a chance to be a part of a group of guys and girls who are doing really special things.
Along with that is you hear about players restructuring contracts so that they're taking less money, and they're maybe keeping, if they're going to get paid, just for a BS number, $100 million, that instead of getting it over 5 years, they restructure it so it's over the course of 10 years. And even though the contract itself is maybe 5 years with the team will pay them over the course of 10 years. So that gives them more money to go get more talent to build the team to try to win. This is stuff you hear about Peyton Manning doing. I think Tom Brady, when he went down to Tampa, like they wanted to play on good teams and they're trying to help. And maybe they legitimately took pay cuts, but we're also talking millions of dollars. Like, oh, you're going to make $100 million. Hey, you know what? For the team, I'll take a $20 million pay cut. Well, that's an insane amount of money, but to them, it's, they're going to make it back with endorsement deals or something like that. But in our world, I would hope that the shops are starting to not just better compensate, okay, but compensate in a way where such things can end up rewarding over time. Meaning, as people come and maybe they could go elsewhere and make more money, Or they could go back to the shop they're working at and say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking about going to shop B. They've got an offer on the table and they're going to pay me $5 an hour more. And then the shop they're at is kind of like, well, okay, what will it take to keep you? Well, I'd really like 5, but how about 6? And you could do that, but it's still the same situation where, other shops could be like, if you make a lateral move, and we as employees have to have this foresight too. It's like, this is a good place to have a great work environment. They have a terrific reputation in town. They have employees that have been there for years and years. They have equipment, whatever, that making this quote unquote lateral move, not devaluing any of that, but we all have bills to pay and I don't get to pay them with shop equipment unless I'm fencing them in the back, that this addition increases the revenue of the shop and therefore is a direct boost to your income because of the success of the shop. And that's that would be kind of nice to see more of that it rewards the building of a team environment, a team culture of success where everyone's working together for the success of the shop, which sounds selfish on the shop's end, selfless on our end, but the reality is it should be selfish for both. It benefits everybody.
Yeah, no, you're right. It should be. And you do think about those guys, like the Bradys, the Mannings, the guys who, like you said, they restructured the contract because they either didn't want to lose people or wanted to give the team the opportunity to have the capital to bring in more and better, more talent for the teams. Because when you have a more talented team, you have a better opportunity to win, to get the prize, essentially. And so talk about a shop looking to bring in more people. Well, maybe you can't always draft in the first round. You can't always get the shiny great A tech. Can you look down the lower rounds? Well, is there a really great B tech that we can bring in here, train them up, and see what we get out of them? There's been a lot of phenomenal guys who come in second, third, fourth round. You're like, man, this guy's got first round talent, but he's down the draft sheet
for who knows what reason. Yeah, in sports, I suppose maybe weight issues or injuries. Yeah, or whatever tests they have at the combines, they didn't score so great in the whatever portion, that started to devalue them, or one of the games in college they choked, didn't have such a great game, lost some value, something like that, but they still had all the tools there. Needed to play somewhere where they could get some confidence. Another thing I wanted to get your opinion on is it's something I've just kind of kept in the back of my head trying to work on, and I don't know if I'm getting anywhere on it. It's kind of has to do with dynasties. There's just certain franchises and businesses, if you will, that are always eventually in the conversation. So the easy ones to rattle off are, in basketball, the Lakers, the Celtics, probably now like the San Antonio Spurs. Football, probably, New England for a while, but now that they don't have Belichick, I don't know how that's going to work out. The Niners, maybe.
Kansas City.
Yeah. Kansas City, like they're building up these dynasties where maybe they don't win. And the Lakers and the Celtics are probably the best example of this, simply because of it's been 50 years or more. You had the Celtics back in the Bill Russell days, where they win more championships than they have fingers. And then they kind of wane a little bit. And then here comes Larry Bird and others, right? They draft people and make trades to strengthen that team, but now they're back on top again. The Minneapolis Lakers dominated. They go to LA, dominate, and then they kind of wane a little bit. And then they're back in the conversation. Jerry West, Will Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, they'd run up against the Celtics and lose, but they were there every year after year after year. And then it waned a little bit. And then boom, Magic Johnson, back at it. And they wane again. And then Shaq, Kobe, back on top. And I get some of it maybe a money thing, big market, but the Boston Celtics aren't big market. They got KG, after the Larry Bird years, they wane a little bit, and then they're kind of back in the conversation, but just couldn't get all the way there, and then wane again, and boom, now you got KG, Paul Pierce. They end up winning again. They're back on top, and now they're a really good team this year. Jason Tatum. So they've built up this dynasty. There's a culture for those teams that the others don't seem to have. And I'm just interested, what, as business owners, even as employees, what can we learn from that? What do they got going on that I could translate over to the shop I work at, the shop I own? What is that mindset in the front office? Because the old guard's gone. If we look at the Celtics, Red Auerbach's been dead for a while. Jerry West is not the GM for the Lakers for a long time. And the guy that took over is under his tutelage had done extremely well. But what can we extract from that?
First, it begins with legacy. These teams you talk about, there's a legacy there. There's a heritage that comes with putting on that jersey. When you put on that green jersey, when you put on that purple jersey, you know that this is something special. There are people who wore this jersey, man, who are multiple champions. Their jerseys are hanging up in the rafters. We go by the trophy case. These guys, there's that legacy there. So I think that they're playing for something that's beyond anything they probably have ever played for before. So I think just playing for legacy is one. In the front office, I think there's that spirit of we have this culture of winning mentality where we've always had a winner in every decade, and at some point in time, we put a winner on the floor, we put a contender on the floor. And so they've got those references. They know what it looks like. They've got those SOPs, so to speak, to go back through and say, okay, here's the winning formula. Here's what we did in the past to win championships. Here's how we draft. Here's how we evaluate talent. Here's how we scout talent. Here's how we bring people in. Do they fit the culture from a mental standpoint, from a personal standpoint? Are they professional? So they've got an entire rubric of how they do that. And then I think when kind of rubber meets the road, there's a level of patience. I think that a lot of these teams are very patient. They're patient with their coaching staffs. Because I think about teams that lose a lot, fire a lot, a whole lot. You look at the Cardinals, who lose the most, fire the most. Always got a new coach in there. Carolina, recently just become one of those teams that just fires a lot. So depending on if you have an owner that just doesn't understand or appreciate what you've built over time, then you're going to run into those problems where you don't have patience with your front office staff, with the people that you've trained and brought in. And then it just trickles down to the people, man. I feel like they spend a lot of time bringing in people who they believe are going to fit the culture, be the face of the business, and show up night in, night out. They don't have to win 82 games, but hey, get us a shot. That's all it takes, is getting into the playoffs. And once we're in the playoffs, it's second season. Now we tighten up and we go. But I think when I think about these dynasties, it's just so formulaic. When you look back, they all seem to have those same components in place where they've got those parts, the legacy part, where they're playing for the name on the front. They're playing for that heritage, that longevity. They've got the front office that they just allow to do their job. They don't deviate from the plan. And then they evaluate talent and bring in the right people and then coach it up. Whenever new pieces are needed, when they continue to evaluate quarterly, monthly, yearly, whatever, however teams evaluate their team, they're always looking for, well, who's the complementary piece? Who's the next piece that we need to get to the next level? It's not always about going straight to the top. Well, who's the guy who's going to win us the Super Bowl? But it's okay, who's the guy that takes us from being a 7-win team outside looking into getting into the playoffs? And then once they're in the playoffs, okay, who's the guy that takes us from a wild card team to a division champion? And then it just stacks and stacks until they've put it all together.
Napa Autotech training sessions are being conducted day and night in a town near you. This training caters to every level within your organization, be it a mechanical assistant, a mechanical specialist, a technology specialist, or a driver safety calibration specialist. Imagine a one-stop shop training partner in Napa Autotech that will lead your team to a path to greatness. Autotech's entry-level Build-A-Tech classes convert the untapped potential of your new hires into money-making mechanical specialists. Autotech's higher-level tech update classes introduce specialists to the world of ever-changing technologies, which prevents your shop from getting technologically stagnant. Remember, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And, turning to the front of the store, the AutoTech Service Advisor class is an awesome way to hone your client advocate skill set, ultimately benefiting the customer through an improved vehicle repair experience. But it doesn't stop there. Imagine an electric vehicle class that takes your specialist well past the mundane, yet necessary safety topics. Well, it's here. AutoTech's EV Ready training is a week-long curriculum that takes participants through a hands-on experience involving hybrids and electric vehicles. The session kicks off with the use of PPE and proper tooling while touching on required OSHA regulations. Then, the students dive into the lab vehicles to gain knowledge of the common high-voltage components on EV and hybrid vehicles and their function. Attendees will be taken on a path exposing them to different electric vehicle manufacturers to compare component form and location. Additionally, information about Level 1 and Level 2 charging systems will be included, along with a quick look at DC to DC charging. The operation and maintenance of subsystems are explored, including the different modes of Tesla operations, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Commit to taking your business to the next level with Napa AutoTech training. One thing that really caught my attention is that patience. A patient mind is a strong mind, and if they're patient, they're also looking, every move is looking for the effect now, but also 5-10 years from now. I know this is heavy on basketball, right? This is heavy on basketball. Those are the examples I've got that basketball was just more of an interest for me, really in school, starting with the Harlem Globetrotters all the way up into probably my 20s, because Minnesota had gotten a franchise, and then we had drafted, not so much drafted, but KG was turning into a superstar, and then we had gotten Wally Zerbiak, who turned out to be better than anyone dared imagine. I mean, all-star level. So I'd watched pretty hard then, and then I would just always kind of keep track of it, and I like watching players and reading about them, but that long-term thinking, like my example was Isaiah Thomas, who is a brilliant, brilliant man. One of the most unfortunately underrated players. When you want to talk about like greatest guards, point guards, he needs to be in these conversations. Was a general manager and maybe coach too, but for sure general manager of the New York Knicks. And he spent a lot of money for success now. And it didn't work. It put them in a massive hole for a long time. And you just can't build up a legacy like that. And I would say the Knicks had a pretty good legacy from back in the 70s for sure. Maybe early 80s, and Ewing, they went to the finals against Houston. So they were very competitive team. They had a great New York attitude on the floor, which helped. That was really neat. But then years later, they had, Patrick's getting older, and they didn't really get anybody back in there to help keep them on top. So they bring in Isaiah Thomas, and he makes a lot of draft choices and free agents where he pays them big money, and it hurt the long-term outlook. So all these moves were very focused on now, plug holes, plug leaks, whatever you want to call it, without looking down the road. And I don't think that's just an Isaiah thing. I think that's a society thing. And I see it a lot in shops and shop owners and employees too. It's everybody. They're so focused on the now that they need to look up a little bit and look down the road and go, how is this going to affect that? And should some of these changes be so revolutionary? Should I be doing this that just makes this big change that may have severe negative consequences down the road? Or should I be looking to make some changes that are more evolutionary, where they're a little slower, not as drastic, not as expensive maybe? They don't risk putting us in a hole that we're going to be trying to dig ourselves out of for the next decade, and just playing the long game.
Yeah, and I think also one thing that I think that tends to shipwreck dynasties, though, is the aging player syndrome. We've got the senior player who's been there for a long time and starts to get those GM tendencies. and starts to want to call the shots. And so rather than allowing the team to bring in young players, guys who can continue this legacy going forward, they start thinking about their job. Is this going to be a threat to my job? Is this person going to take my spot? I don't want to coach the next guy behind me who could have invariably replaced me on the position. So I think that is what shipwrecks a whole lot of dynasties. And I can see that happening in businesses where perhaps you have a tech who's been around for a long time, tenured tech, 15, 20 years, and you want to bring in some younger guys, and maybe they don't want to teach. Maybe they don't want to pass that, kind of spend that time teaching because I've got to make my money. I've got to turn the wrench. I got to make my money too, and I don't want to take time out of my day to help somebody else. But invariably, when you do that, when you take that time to help the other person, as that person levels up, everybody's coming up with them. You're bringing up the entire back end of the ship with you when you do that. So that little bit of time that's spent helping bring on this younger group of people, like in a sports team, it goes a long way.
Yeah, that's where I'd like to see management do a better job of communicating that and explaining that. And then not just talking about it, back it up. Help create that environment where you're not punished to go help out a coworker, be it, young blood or the newbie, the greenhorn, whatever. There's a lot of shops I'm aware of where somebody will approach one of the techs, often a senior tech, and say, hey, you want to kind of take a quick look at this with me? And they turn to them and they're like, I'll do it for 2/10. So they have to credit them for 2/10 on that ticket to go over and look at that. I don't disagree with the person asking should probably offer, if that's how the job and the shop is structured, to respect people's time. But overall, I find it appalling, absolutely appalling that is how the shop is structured. That is how people are paid, is strictly on cranking out time. And I mean, I get it. That's labor. The more labor you can charge, the more money for everybody. But it just seems like there's a better way, especially long term, for everybody, that, like you said, really helps raise that tide.
Yeah, and it can cost you good people. I mean, for many years, when I first started dating my wife 10, 12 years ago, she worked as a server, right? And that, of course, you know how restaurant culture can be. But as a server, so she's making a couple bucks an hour, so she's heavily reliant on the generosity of her patrons. She needs those tips. And of course, the bussers, they get paid full wages. They get their regular $6, $7, $8, whatever the wages, they get a regular standard wage. So they're completely undependent upon tips. And so the big frustration with servers was the fact that at the end of the night, after they've garnered all their tips and all their money, they had to tip out their bus people. And it drove her absolutely nuts. She's like, they get a full wage. They get their $8, $9 an hour. I'm here $2.70, $2.17, $2.20 an hour, hoping that I'm giving good enough service to warrant a good tip. And I've got to share my tips with the guy who's cleaning the table, who makes all of his money. It just didn't seem fair.
Yeah, it's like a generosity, and it's also just respect, like awareness.
There's a lot of strange business culture where,
Yeah, I don't know. Meritocracy, there's a lot to it.
There really
but
is.
The people in control of it need to be aware of it.
Yeah. So when you said the 2/10, it made me think about that situation where it's like, I'm just, like I said, not that you don't want to be generous towards someone or acknowledge, but when you create an expectation, I think that's when the problems start to arise. Well, I'm asking you for helping, but there's an expectation that I pay you to help me. That's a little hard to take.
I think if everyone's acting at their best or most aware that the person asking makes the offer legitimately, honestly, heartfelt, and the person receiving the request respects that person respects my time, therefore, and now it is up to me to reject the offer. It's just kind of like helping a neighbor out, right? I bought some stuff down at the lumber yard. Could I rent your trailer from you? The neighbor can be like, oh, okay, they value that. Therefore, no, don't worry about it. And now sometime I need help. I need to borrow something, or can you come over and help me do this? And then when they're trying to hand you a few bucks for your time, you're kind of like, no. I appreciate that, but you would let me use your trailer. So hopefully we're even. I'm probably still in the red on this, and you'd like to see that as a more of a microcosm in the shop, that everyone kind of just respects everyone's time, and the techs kind of own tools and stuff, and you have to go borrow. They got the special socket set for whatever car line, that there's a respect there. It's like, hey, can I rent this? And, don't worry about it, or, go grab me a soda or something. Or
you have to look at it. If you're that tech who's being asked to help, it is 100% in my best interest to make sure that this guy next to me is dynamite. I want my coworkers, because if I'm winning, I want my coworkers to win naturally. I want them to be just as good as me, better than me, whatever the case may be, because it's in my best interest.
Yeah, because the long-term effects is the reputation of the shop improves, more cars come in, people trust the shop more, tickets sales go up, my income goes up, or it should go up. Yeah,
it should go up, but I think you have to think beyond, like you talk about. You have to think outside of yourself. You have to be very. You talk about in sports, the selfless player, the guy who's always looking out for the team, or the guy who puts team first. It's kind of the core tenet of Miami Heat culture, right? Where everything is about the entire team. It's not about the superstar. It's about we all do it together.
And who runs that team?
Pat Riley.
Patrick Riley. And where did he come from? The
Los Angeles.
And the Knicks. That guy's been everywhere.
But everywhere he's gone, Patrick Riley's won. Pat Riley's won everywhere he's gone. He's got a ring in every single city. He's got a ring. He's got a ring as a GM. He's got a ring as a coach. The guy knows what it takes to be a winner, and being a winner is just being selfless at the end of the day.
Just kind of the optics too. Like, he was aware of the optics. He was not a suit and tie guy, but he wore suits and ties and had his hair done when he was the coach of that team, because that was the optics. They had to look the part. And yes, it was the Showtime Lakers that everyone got to see, but the practices were not the Showtime Lakers. This was hard work, dirty. Everyone's going to remember the fast breaks and the no-look passes and all that. But what's going to win us championships is defense when we need to lock it down. A very, very well hidden 1-3-1 zone when zone defenses were illegal. Very well hidden. And also the little stuff, rebounds. When you have, we'll call them like core team members or players, specifically superstars that buy into the system, that by itself almost creates a culture of success over and over and over. I'm sure if we think long enough, we'll think of some team where the superstar never bought into the system, but they won anyways. I'm sure we could figure it out, but it's way easier to rattle them off where the core team, or the core members of the team, whether it's the A superstar or the big three or the twin towers or two big guns, they all buy into the system. And they create this culture of team first, really. It's easy to go back, Magic, Larry, when they're on those teams, like, yeah, okay, Larry could fill that basket up, but he passed a lot, and it created a culture of passing and sharing. And of course, Magic, like, you always had to be ready for that ball, because when you least expected it, it's being fired at your face. And we saw that with Jason Kidd, and we've seen that. I think lately, and I'm switching to technically WNBA, but I'm thinking college, Caitlin Clark, like, she's on the highlight reels with logo threes, but watch her pass. Some of those passes are insane. Full court, in stride, hitting a teammate for a layup or a cutter. It's brilliant. And it just creates this atmosphere of the team of more passing, more open shots for everyone. It's easier to just buy into it and have fun out there and forget that the pressure of winning. I think there's a lot to that. I think when your main people buy into your system and help make the system if need be, like that, and that would be more like a Peyton Manning type thing. Tom Brady, I think especially when he went to Tampa Bay, those guys came from winning organizations, more so than Peyton. Peyton did win in Indianapolis, and he probably could have won again threw a very ill-timed interception against Nolans. But then he goes to Denver with a neck injury and a severely weakened throwing arm, and they're in the conversation right away. And then he wins and they win a championship he couldn't throw. I don't know if he could throw the ball 30 yards.
Oh no, that championship was almost all defense. The second time when they went there, because the first time they went to the Super Bowl, they got, hammered by Seattle. Yep. And they came back the year after that, and I don't think he didn't throw 200 yards that game, I don't think.
I don't think he could physically throw it anymore, or the damn. But I remember the interviews with the players and the coaches, like when Peyton got there, once the ink was signed, it wasn't even dry. The culture of the team changed because now your main guy, which by title, the quarterback by title is kind of the leader, at least of the offense. And they usually have the biggest contract, and he's got a name, and he's already in the offices. He's already in the training rooms, looking at tape, calling up all his wide receivers. Let's get together, throw the ball around. Let's start working on plays we're going to use during the season, in games. It changed so much. And not like Denver didn't win before. Elway won a couple, but Peyton changed the culture of that. And Tom did it again when he went to freaking Tampa Bay. Like, it's all of a sudden the mindset changes. And Tampa Bay had won a championship before that. Was Dilfer the quarterback then?
That was Brad Johnson.
Brad Johnson, former Viking. Heavy on defense. Very heavy on defense. But they get there and they change. They just change the culture and the environment of everything because of their attitude and how they buy in. And when they're there, the first one to get there, the last one to leave, working their tail off, sacrificing, it's hard not to join that. And I think that can translate into any business, shops included. If you're the owner, the manager, and your employees see you working and sacrificing, it's hard for them not to.
When you think about someone like that, like a Manning or a Brady, these guys who are just leaders, right? They come into a team. They can go in any team, any situation. I think Kurt Warner was like that too when he went to Arizona. But it's like you think about these guys who are natural. They're natural leaders, but at the same time, when they come to a place, people gravitate towards them because they give them hope. They give them a whole lot of hope. Okay, we've done a lot of losing here. We haven't played well. You're the guy. We know it. So they give them a whole lot of hope. But then the leader comes with two things that I think really cement it for them. They come with this like unbridled passion for winning. They love to win. They want to win, and they want other people to feel that. They want other people to feel what it feels like to win at the highest level. And two, like you talked about, they're very tied to the purpose of the team. They're very tied to the mission and the purpose. And I think when you talk about a shop environment, you've got someone in that back room who's like that, who's very passionate about the work they do. They just love it. They breathe it. They eat it and sleep it. And then they believe in the company they work for. They're tied to the passion, tied to the mission of the company. They care about the customers. It elevates everybody because everybody, it's intoxicating. It's contagious. You can't help but to want to be like that.
And it translates. Football's a good one because you have offense and defense, almost like different teams on the same team. Well, shops have that. You have the front of house and the back of house. You have the advisors, maybe certain managers that deal with the client directly, and then they speak with the engine room, the technicians, the mechanics, the mechanical and technical specialists. And that's very football-esque. Very football-esque. And you can have a really strong front of house and a weak shop mechanics, and the shop fails. And vice versa. You can have a brilliant service department, but if you got people up front that do not interact well with the public, can't sell it, it fails. It's just like football team, right? You can have the best offense, but if the defense is terrible, they can't get a few good stops, forget about it. You can't win. Not the big one.
No, and that piece we talk about, the front of the house, a lot of that comes from believing in the mission, believing in what you're doing, believing in the product that you have, believing in the people in the back who can do the work. Because if you believe especially if you believe in your technique, you believe in your people who can do the work, you believe in why you're there, then there's no reason that you can't project that. There's no reason it doesn't come out of you.
Yeah, and as a manager or owner, you have to respect that, because if you have that front of house that they're working really hard, they're selling, they're training themselves to get better and better, but the service department is dropping the ball over and over and over. Lack of quality, lack of production. Forgive me for the example. It's a little dicey when you start talking about that, but I think consistently, if it's always they're underproducing, now that's a problem. Not talking about any specific vehicle here and there where, whatever. There are many reasons that you might not get it done when you're quote unquote supposed to. But in general, if production's low, quality's low, as a manager, you got to be looking at that. Like, I've got a really good offense up here. The offensive side of the ball, we're killing it, but I got to get my defense going. Otherwise, this team can't win. And now what do I got to do? Is it a quote unquote coaching? Not saying you're firing people to bring in a different coach, but is training? Is it bringing in a different, a different member? Maybe you got some toxicity back there that has to go. Maybe I got to bring in a different person, or I got to get rid of somebody and bring somebody else in to change that culture back there and try to get it up to par with the front. I think that's a very valid comparison that we need to think about. And then they eventually do kind of work together. The defense and the offense, they do kind of work together. You do see the captains talking, and, there's audio on YouTube. You can hear Tom Brady walking over to whoever saying, would you help me get some field position? I'm kind of tired of starting out on the 20-yard line or the 1-yard line. It's rare that you have a very successful team that has a toxic player on it. Even if they're really, really good, that they're toxic. And I know the easy one for me to example is Mr. Rodman, Dennis Rodman. And is that who you were thinking, or did you have somebody else in mind?
I thought you were going to say Randy Moss when his Minnesota tenure.
It could have been Randy. He's probably maybe in a better example because he was like Pro Bowl level.
But he was high caliber, but then he just kind of was button heads with Dennis Green and wasn't working out.
We're talking about his time with the Vikings.
But no, Rodman's a good example. I guess he's a pretty good example. Are you talking Chicago Rodman or Detroit Rodman?
So Detroit, he was okay until he started to get recognized and they were winning, and now he's kind of a key component. But I think Chuck Daly had him kind of figured out. I think Dennis respected the hell out of Isaiah. Probably Joe Dumars, big time. And John Sally and him came in together. So that was a very tight-knit family. So I think he kept it kind of in check. You got to see a little bit of it. But when he started going to like San Antonio Spurs, he had an extremely short stint with the Mavericks. Of course, the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls were really smart. And then, for one, it's freaking Michael Jordan. So Rodman's going to mess with Mike. We all know he decked Steve Kerr, but I'm not sure if that fight happened, Mike would be fighting it alone. But they also had, I want to say it was Judd Bushler, but it could have been somebody else. I thought it was maybe Judd Bushler, but they had the 12th man really didn't play at all. But him and Dennis were tight. And that was the person that was kind of responsible for keeping Rodman focused, doing the right things, making sure he made it to games, because he'd be out partying and doing whatever. Other teams, you go to San Antonio, Greg Popovich is not going to be doing that. It's like, you're either here playing or you're not. But because of it, he helps Chicago win 3 in a row for a second time with arguably the best team. There's a strong argument that was the best team ever. The 72 win.
Mm-hmm.
When you have somebody that's just destroying the locker room, you got to get rid of them. Even if they're great, the great players are terrific assets, and how are you going to replace them? Like, there's no immediate replacement for this person. So now you're trading them away or firing them in our case, and you might have to bring in 2-3 people to try to do what they could do again, playing the long game that they're going to develop, almost kind of like Moneyball.
I mean, when you think about it, shops pretty much operate on very similar budgets to the Oakland A's, but the A's figured out how to turn out a winner. How do you evaluate talent? And I think that's what it really boils down to. How do you evaluate talent? Are we looking at the guys we quote unquote can't afford? Are we looking at the guys who are best in class, the cream of the crop, the best people out there? Or are we saying, okay, well, who's the best for our team? Because there's a difference. There's a difference between getting the best person and the best person for your team. The best person may not be the right fit, but the best person for your team will always be the right fit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. More than just straight up numbers. You can always argue everything's numbers. It's like predicting the weather, right? We could predict the weather with 100% accuracy, but getting all the information we need to do it is really difficult. Nigh impossible. So we can't make 100% predictions because we just don't have all the information we need to do it. Maybe with quantum computers we'll be able to do it. But anyways, with employees, I think it's kind of something we've been bringing up often is that culture. Like I can bring in somebody that maybe doesn't bang out as much work as that person does, but that person has an attitude we have to deal with, or kind of a prima donna, or they can be really cruel to service advisors, or they're really short with customers or something like that, where it's just, do I want to put up with that? And I know what the skill gap, like we just don't have a lot of people coming into the profession, and we're going to keep hemorrhaging talent. They're going to age out, or they're getting fed up with the poorly run shops that they're leaving. You start hanging on to people you never would have hung on to before because you feel like you can't replace them, but you might not be able to replace them with one person, or you're going to have to change your value system a little bit where this person consistently could bill 50 hours a week. This person consistently does 38, but they're great. Their workmanship is top notch. They're terrific with customers. They're terrific with coworkers, helping out. Everyone seems to have a better time. Like you said, that tide starts going up, and now that individual's performance is maybe lower than the other person's performance, but the overall shop performance went up. And that's what really counts. Or even if it's the same or slightly lower, but your stress level has dropped, sometimes that's worth a lot too.
Yeah. I think some of it also, we talk a lot about the players, but I think some of the onus goes on to the coach as well. It's like, okay, as a coach, am I developing myself? Am I improving myself as the coach? Because you have to become that guy that the players don't cross, no matter how toxic they get. Like a guy like Bruce Arians, those guys weren't going to cross him. Or a guy like Bill Belichick. These guys they had immense amount of personalities, but they would sit in a press conference and it would just be as boring as all get out because they towed the company line. They knew if they cut up in a press conference, they would hear about it. Bill was not going to have it. Because there was a time when they were having the feud with Rex Ryan and the Jets, and I think it wasn't Edelman, it was Welker had made this comment about Rex Ryan liking feet, and Bill suspended him for a game. Just over a press conference. So they knew that, okay, they had to toe the line. So I think some of it is the culture has to run through the shop owner. The shop owner really is the guardian of that culture, and that culture has to radiate through him. Much like it does now with Eric Spoelstra, the culture radiates through Eric Spoelstra, and the team respects him.
When you say that, the first coach that pops into my head is Jerry Sloan of the Utah Jazz. Some altercation with a team, and it looks like Jerry Sloan, the coach, who is probably at this time in his 60s, is ready to throw down with this player on the other team. Like he's coming out ready to start throwing haymakers. And Karl Malone runs over and hugs the other player. And Karl Malone, if you don't follow basketball, this guy is a 6'9" Superman. Like he's built like a brick, you know what, right? He is ripped. One of the strongest players maybe in history, but certainly at that time, hugs this other player and guides him away from Jerry Sloan. And that player is kind of like, you're lucky. He's lucky. Your coach, Jerry Sloan, is lucky you're doing this because I would kick his ass. And Carl's like, hey, you know what? I'm not doing this for him. I'm protecting you.
Yeah, I mean, you had those guys. I mean, that's a great story.
It's like, I'm protecting you.
Yeah, I mean, you had those old school coaches were like that. I mean, George Karl, they used to have stories about him. Oh, man, like Gary Payton, just the one guy that would shut him down was George Karl. He could say what he wanted to any other coach. George Karl, nothing. He had nothing for him. But then you look at the flip side of that, and you look at a guy like Steve Kerr, who's just a smart coach, great tactician, wins championships, but he allows Draymond Green to just erode the team, demoralize the team.
Yep. Steve Kerr, yep.
And it's like, okay, you can be a brilliant leader, but to continue to be undermined by the toxic player and not properly discipline him or make excuses for him, because I feel like Steve Kerr makes a lot of excuses for Draymond as opposed to making Draymond take accountability for his actions.
Yeah, especially when we punched a teammate. There's a documentary on, I think, everywhere now called The Last Dance, and is talking about the Chicago Bulls leading up to where the general manager basically says, okay, I've gotten as much out of this team as I'm going to get. The general manager's name was Jerry Krause, but it is outrageous. I think his Hall of Fame induction, his wife got booed. He passed away a while ago. His wife goes up to accept the reward, and she got booed. This guy helped put together a team that won 6 championships, 2 3-peats, so 3 in a row. Jordan retires for a couple of years to play baseball, comes back. They win 3 more. He helped do that. I don't want to speak to him as anything terrific as a human being or anything like that, but he was involved. And sure, some of it's lucky. Scottie Pippen turned out to be a top 50 player. Nobody saw that coming. So it's outrageous to boo her. But the point of the documentary was eventually, after all this winning, I think the players are interested in trying to do it again, try to go for a 4-peat. This is now Boston Celtics, like legacy Boston Celtics, Bill Russell level things. Nobody has done any of that since the Bill Russell Celtics won 4 in a row. And Jerry Krause is like, no, we've rode this horse as long as it's going to go. He blows it up. Scottie Pippen's gone. Everybody's gone. I think Michael retires, and until he comes back to play for the Wizards. I guess I would strongly suggest you watch it, even if you don't like basketball. But Michael Jordan was a very, very intense competitor and demanded. And the reason I think he was very well respected was he demanded the best out of himself and out of you. And their practices were not ticky-tack. Michael Jordan wasn't running around with a little yellow jersey where you couldn't touch him. Got to protect him. It's not like light contact. They practiced hard. I think the idea was to practice harder than the games would be. During one of these practices, Michael ends up on Steve Kerr. And Steve Kerr is a much shorter 3-point specialist. And I don't mean that to demean him as a player, but he's not 6'6", built and all that. But I think Steve hit a couple shots on Mike, and then Mike's talking smack of, you can't guard me, backs him down. You know, there's nothing Steve's going to do to stop this guy from scoring. But it's a little bit of back and forth. And Steve's kind of standing up to him. And I think that's the right thing to do to earn Mike's respect, which I'll get to, leads to them winning because of it. But it gets pretty chippy. And finally, Mike has enough and he decks him. Decks Steve Kerr. Of course, the coach, Phil Jackson, throws Michael out of the practice and all that. But before the end of the day, he is apologizing profusely to Steve Kerr. And this isn't the only player that this has happened to. I think Will Perdue also took a shot. But it ends up, and I'm not trying to justify it or anything like that. There's no reason to ever strike any, especially a teammate. But they end up earning Mike's respect. And in Steve Kerr's case, there is a very, very key moment in one of their championship finals games that they end up winning where Mike turns to Steve and says, "You're going to be open. I'm going to get you the ball." And Steve Kerr has an out-of-body experience and goes, "I'll make it." And then somehow, some way, he forgot he said that because Mike threw him the ball and he hit the shot, which most of us would be like, "Oh crap, I said I was going to hit this." Draymond Green is back to what Chris is saying here. Draymond Green ends up punching a teammate. There's no apologies. Like you don't hear from the teammate, anyone on the team that Draymond showed up at his house with, chocolates and flowers crying, "I'm so sorry," or phone calls or any kind of contact. Like, that was inexcusable. "I am so sorry." And then the relationship ends up tighter. That didn't happen. That did not happen. And Steve Kerr, the coach, that's a major criticism. You can't let that happen. Like, you shouldn't let anyone strike another team member. But I think if you see the dynamics shift to where now they're actually tighter, there's some disciplinary action for the public to see. But for the most part, it's like this team just got better. That didn't happen with Golden State. That did not happen with Draymond Green. And it just continued to erode the team. Like, they looked like they could have been in the title conversation this year. Nope. They're out.
They're a cautionary tale of a team that was very successful but had no real culture. Because you can't really point to anything and say, "Wow, that Warriors culture was so good." No, the Warriors just won. They just won. Because Steph Curry was just lights out good. Klay Thompson was playing phenomenal. Like, they just had all the right pieces at all the right time. Great head coach. They just won. But there's nothing that points to culture being part of that winning. Because if they had a true and genuine culture, a guy like Durant would never have in and out of that. He wouldn't have came in and left, despite the fact. And I know that he's influenced by the public thinking he can't lead a team. And I don't think every dynamic player needs to be a leader. Like, he's just not a leader. End of story. Like, it's okay to be a really high scoring role player. And I think that's what he is. An exceptional player who's a scoring machine, but he's a role player at the end of the day. Like, he's a guy who has to be the second option. He cannot be the first option.
I totally agree with that.
Had they had a true culture there, like you see in Miami, he wouldn't have left. He would have sat there and said, "Wow, I just want to rattle off titles and just be among the greats right here in San Francisco."
Yep. Try to get more rings than Robert Horry.
Yeah. So I think it speaks to. So I think there is that illusion that, okay, if I'm winning, that means I must have a great culture. If I'm winning, that must mean things are going right in the workplace. But that's not always the case. You always have to check that down.
That's some words to live by there. So you speak as good as you write.
Thank you.
I don't like you as much as I did before. Wow. So this is Chris Jones, editor of Ratchet+Wrench. An absolute pleasure having you on. There's enough to talk about here. I'd really like to have you on again, and I could talk sports all day, especially basketball.
I'm telling you. I know. I love basketball. I love the NBA.
The Wolves let me down, but I don't know. They're still up 2-1 on the Nuggets.
Yeah, they're scary.
Can't thank you enough for coming on.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you reaching out. Glad we could do this, and I look forward to more collaboration.
So do I. Very much so. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for all the comments, especially about the latest episode, seemingly a little controversial, but I appreciate that. Please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email me at mattfonslowpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you to Napa Auto Tech Training for sponsoring, and thank you to the Aftermarket Radio Network for letting me get away with all this. So thanks again, Chris. It was an absolute pleasure.
Right on. Same.
Well, thank you, everyone. Take care.
You've been listening to Matt Fanslow, diagnosing the aftermarket A to Z on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Matt on your favorite listening app. He's very interested in what you have to say. Let him know what you'd like him to cover and come on the show. Matt is all for advancing the aftermarket. Find Matt Fanslow on social media and connect or on aftermarketradionetwork.com.